Did you know that the man filming some of the most famous scenes in Deep Impact was quietly dying while the cameras kept rolling? Nobody in the audience ever knew. Behind the calm ocean, the falling comet, and the brave astronauts, there was a real story hiding in the shadows of the set. It is a story full of secrets, sacrifice, and surprises that never made it to the movie posters. Some of it is heartbreaking. Some of it is funny. All of it is true. Let's dive in and discover 20 weird and amazing facts about Deep Impact. Number 20. The movie that was never supposed to be alone. In the spring of 1998, something strange happened in Hollywood. Two giant movies about the same idea, a rock from space that could end the world, landed in theaters within weeks of each other. One was called Armageddon. The other was Deep Impact. Nobody outside the studios planned it that way, but suddenly two teams of filmmakers were racing each other without even meeting face to face. Executives panicked. Marketing teams scrambled. Audiences got confused about which movie was which. Deep Impact came first, quiet and serious, almost like a warning shot before the bigger explosion of its rival arrived. It told its story through families, mothers, and frightened kids, not through gunfire and rock music. Some critics called it the smarter cousin. Others said it got lost in the noise of its louder twin. But here is the strange twist. Years later, scientists and space experts came back and said something surprising. They said Deep Impact got the science more right. It was not as loud, but it was more honest. It looked like a small story next to a giant one. It turned out to be the one that aged better. Number 19. A director who broke the mold. Big disaster movies in the 90s almost always had one thing in common. A man sat in the director's chair, shouting through the chaos of explosions and falling buildings. Deep Impact broke that pattern. The director was Mimi Leader, and she was stepping into a world that rarely gave women the keys to a $100 million spaceship. She had to prove herself on a set filled with tidal waves, comet fragments, and nervous studio executives watching every dollar. She did not just survive the pressure. She shaped the whole emotional heart of the film. Where other disaster movies loved to show buildings falling apart, she wanted to show people falling apart and then somehow holding each other together. Crew members later said she brought a softness to scenes that could have felt cold and mechanical. She turned a story about the end of the world into a story about mothers, daughters, and second chances. Nobody was sure Hollywood was ready for that combination. It looked like just another summer blockbuster on the surface. Underneath, it was something quieter and much braver. Number 18. Two studios, one comet. Here is something almost nobody remembers when they watch the movie today. Deep Impact was not released by just one studio. It was shared. Paramount handled it in the United States, while DreamWorks carried it everywhere else in the world. Two giant companies, usually rivals, had to work side by side on the same falling comet. That kind of teamwork was rare and strange for its time. Meetings must have felt like careful diplomacy. Two teams trying to protect their own interests while still building one shared movie. Posters, trailers, and press events had to satisfy two different corporate machines at once. It sounds simple now, just a name on a logo, but insiders knew it was a delicate balancing act behind closed doors. What looked like one smooth movie release was actually two companies tiptoeing around each other every single day. It looked calm to the public. Behind the scenes, it was constant negotiation. Number 17. Steven Spielberg's secret hand. Many fans do not realize that Steven Spielberg, one of the most powerful names in movie history, was quietly guiding this project from behind the curtain as an executive producer. He was not directing every shot or standing behind the camera every day, but his fingerprints were all over the decisions that shaped the film. His studio, DreamWorks, was brand new at the time, and Deep Impact became one of its earliest big tests. Spielberg understood something that many big directors forget. Disaster movies do not scare people with explosions. They scare people with love, with family, with the fear of losing someone you cannot protect. That instinct shaped the whole soul of Deep Impact. It became less about the comet and more about the goodbyes, the phone calls, and the choices people make when time runs out. A giant name stayed mostly invisible, and yet his fingerprints were on almost every emotional beat of the story. Number 16. The sick man behind the camera. This is the fact that turns the whole movie into something deeply human. Dietrich Lohmann, the man responsible for the look and feel of every single shot, was secretly battling leukemia while filming Deep Impact. Cast and crew slowly learned the truth as filming continued, and the mood on set must have carried a strange, quiet heaviness. beneath all the noise of explosions and special effects. Imagine framing shots of the end of the world while quietly facing the end of your own. He kept working, kept guiding cameras through chaos, kept doing his job with skill and dedication. Not long after the production wrapped, he passed away. The film was later dedicated to his memory. Audiences watching the movie in theaters never knew that behind every carefully lit scene was a man fighting his own private storm. What looked like just another technical credit at the end of the film was actually a quiet tribute to real courage. Number 15. A highway built with hidden bathrooms, one of the most chaotic scenes in the movie, shows a massive traffic jam. People trying to escape a coming tidal wave, trapped bumper to bumper on a highway. To pull this off, the crew needed a real giant location, so they used a brand new freeway in Virginia that had not even opened to regular traffic yet. Hundreds of vehicles needed to move together like a strange, slow dance, and coordinating that many drivers without complete chaos seemed almost impossible. So the crew got creative. Some of the trucks parked among the fake escaping cars were not props at all. They were secretly holding portable bathrooms and food stands for the massive cast and crew working all day in the heat. To direct the traffic of confused extras, the team used a radio transmitter telling every driver to tune their car radio to one specific station for instructions. From above, it looked like believable panic. On the ground, it was one giant, carefully choreographed traffic puzzle. It looked easy on screen, but it was controlled chaos behind the camera. Number 14. The kids who almost vanished from their own movie Elijah Wood played Leo Biderman, a teenager who discovers the comet with his classmate Sarah Hotchner. In early versions of the film, their story together was much bigger. The first cut included far more scenes showing their growing bond as the world outside slowly falls apart. But when it came time to trim the movie down to its final length, editors made a hard choice and cut a large amount of that footage. Entire moments between the two young characters ended up left on the cutting room floor, seen by almost nobody outside the studio. Fans who love their story in the finished film might be surprised to learn how much more of it once existed. What survived on screen is only a piece of a much bigger, quieter teenage love story hidden somewhere in old film reels. Sometimes the saddest cuts are not the dramatic ones. They are the small, gentle moments nobody ever sees. Number 13. The speech that was never supposed to exist near the end of the film, President Beck, played by Morgan Freeman, delivers a hopeful speech about rebuilding the world after disaster strikes. It feels like the emotional heartbeat of the entire movie, yet this powerful moment was almost never part of the plan. It was added at the very last minute, specifically because filmmakers worried the ending felt too heavy and hopeless without it. Test audiences and creative instincts pushed the team to give viewers something to hold on to before the credits rolled. Morgan Freeman delivered the words with such calm strength that many viewers now consider it one of the most memorable speeches in disaster movie history. Without that late addition, the film might have left audiences walking out of theaters in silence and sadness. Instead, it gave them a small light at the end of a very dark story. A last-minute idea became the line most people remember years later. Number 12. Real Voices that never made the cut. The original script for Deep Impact was even more ambitious than the finished film. Writers planned to include real-world television personalities such as Bill Maher and David Letterman, appearing as themselves to react to the news of an approaching comet. The idea was clever. Showing real famous faces reacting to fictional disaster would make the danger feel more believable to audiences watching at home. It would blur the line between movie and reality in a clever, unsettling way. In the end, not all of those planned appearances made it into the final cut. Some ideas were trimmed for time, focus, or simple logistics. What remains in the movie today still uses fictional news anchors and reporters to build that same sense of panic, but the plan once reached even further into real celebrity culture than most viewers ever realized. What looked like a straightforward disaster story almost became something much stranger and more experimental. Number 11. The studio that built Jurassic Park built the wave to the jaw, dropping visual effects in Deep Impact. Especially that massive tidal wave crashing into New York City came from Industrial Light and Magic, the same legendary effects studio behind Jurassic Park. Bringing dinosaurs back to life and drowning entire cities under a wall of water require very different kinds of magic. Yet the same brilliant minds tackled both challenges. Creating a believable wave tall enough to swallow skyscrapers meant blending miniature models, computer animation, and old-fashioned filmmaking tricks into one seamless illusion. Every falling building, every rushing wave of water had to feel terrifyingly real without actually risking a single life. Audiences sitting in dark theaters gasped at water that never truly existed outside a computer screen and a scale model tank. What looked like the ocean itself attacking a city was really the same wizardry that once made a Tyrannosaurus Rex walk and roar. Different disaster. Same impossible magic. Number 10. Music written in the shadow of a sinking ship. Composer James Horner wrote the emotional score for Deep Impact right after finishing one of the most famous film scores of all time, the music for Titanic. Imagine stepping straight from composing the sound of one sinking ship into composing the sound of an entire planet facing possible destruction. Both stories share a strange, haunting connection. Ordinary people facing enormous, uncontrollable forces of nature. Horner brought a similar emotional weight to Deep Impact, using sweeping orchestral sounds to make audiences feel small next to something massive and unstoppable. His music did not just support the scenes. It shaped how frightened or how hopeful viewers felt in each moment. Coming directly off the success of Titanic, he carried enormous expectations into this new project. Few composers in history have moved from one world-ending soundtrack to another so quickly. It looked like a coincidence of timing, but it was really the same artist finding new ways to make audiences cry. Number 9. Scientists whispering behind the scenes. While Armageddon leaned heavily into big action and looser science, Deep Impact tried something different. The filmmakers wanted their comet, their spacecraft, and their disaster to feel scientifically believable, not just exciting. Real astronomers and space experts were consulted during development, shaping details about how a comet might actually be detected, tracked, and possibly destroyed. This attention to accuracy later became one of the film's quiet strengths. Years after release, scientists and astronomy fans often pointed to Deep Impact as the more realistic of the two competing comet movies from 1998. It did not always choose the flashiest option when a more accurate one existed. That decision may have cost it a little excitement on screen, but it earned something rarer: respect from the very experts whose real work inspired the story. What looked like a simple choice between drama and truth quietly became one of the film's proudest achievements. Number 8. A comet with a bittersweet name in the story. The comet threatening Earth is named Wolf Biedermann, combining the names of the two young astronomers, Leo Biedermann and his teacher Wolf, who first discover it while stargazing with their school telescope. Giving the object of humanity's greatest fear the name of a curious teenager is a small but powerful storytelling choice. It transforms a distant cosmic threat into something deeply personal, forever tied to one ordinary kid's ordinary night. Every time a character on screen says the comet's name, they are quietly honoring the discovery of two people, one of them barely more than a child. It is easy to miss this detail while watching the special effects and disaster sequences, but it adds a strange intimacy to an otherwise massive, impersonal threat. A planet-ending object carries a teenager's last name. That small detail turns fear into something oddly personal. Number 7. The boy who named a piece of the sky building on that same idea. Leo Biedermann becomes a kind of accidental celebrity within the story simply because he happened to be looking through a telescope at the right moment. His ordinary curiosity about the night sky sets off a chain of events that changes the fate of the entire planet. It is a reminder, tucked quietly inside a giant summer blockbuster, that history sometimes turns on the smallest, most unplanned moments. A teenager pointing a telescope upward on a random evening becomes forever connected to the biggest event in human history. The film uses this idea to keep its story grounded in something human and relatable, even while spaceships and comets dominate the plot. Big disasters usually get big dramatic beginnings in movies. This one begins with a curious kid, a telescope, and a quiet night. Something so small ends up shaping something so enormous. Number 6. A wave that cost a fortune. Creating a believable tidal wave capable of destroying New York City was not cheap or simple. The sequence became one of the most technically demanding and expensive parts of the entire production. Teams built detailed miniature models of the city, then combined them with early computer-generated water effects to create something audiences had rarely seen with this level of realism. Every splash, every crumbling building, every desperate crowd running from rising water needed careful planning long before cameras started rolling. The budget poured into this single sequence reflected just how important the studio believed this moment would be for selling tickets and creating buzz. In many ways, that giant wave became the face of the entire marketing campaign, appearing again and again in trailers and posters. Audiences came expecting to see that wave, and the film knew it had to deliver something unforgettable. Money alone cannot buy fear, but in this case, it certainly helped build it convincingly. Number 5. The astronomers who found the truth in fiction after release, real scientists, could not stop comparing Deep Impact to its rival film Armageddon, and the comparisons almost always favored Deep Impact for accuracy. Experts pointed out details about comet composition, orbital mechanics, and realistic mission planning that felt more grounded than the wilder, looser science of the competing movie. This quiet praise from the scientific community gave Deep Impact a strange kind of second life. It became the film that teachers might mention in classrooms, the one astronomy enthusiasts recommended to friends who wanted something believable alongside the excitement. That reputation did not exist on release day. It grew slowly, built by word of mouth among people who cared deeply about getting the details right. A movie built partly on real scientific consultation eventually earned real scientific respect. Sometimes the reward for choosing accuracy over spectacle does not arrive immediately. It arrives years later, quietly, from the people who actually know the difference. Number 4. A teenager carrying the world's fear, Elijah Wood was still a teenager himself when he took on the role of Leo Biederman, a character forced to process the terrifying idea that the world might end before he even finishes growing up. Playing fear that big is not easy for any actor, let alone one so young. He had to convincingly portray a kid falling in love, saying goodbye to loved ones, and facing impossible choices, all while surrounded by enormous sets and special effects designed to represent global catastrophe. Working alongside more experienced actors like Vanessa Redgrave, who played his mother in the story, gave him strong scene partners to lean on emotionally. Audiences connected with his performance because his fear felt real, not exaggerated for drama. He was not just acting scared, he was representing an entire generation of young viewers imagining what they would do if the impossible actually happened. What looked like simple acting was really a young performer carrying real emotional weight for millions of viewers. Number 3. The actress who carried the story on her shoulders, Téa Leoni, played Jenny Lerner, an ambitious journalist who accidentally uncovers the secret government plan surrounding the comet. Her character becomes the emotional thread connecting almost every other storyline in the film, from politics to family drama to personal regret. Leoni had to balance toughness and vulnerability at the same time, playing someone chasing the biggest story of her career while quietly falling apart over broken family relationships. It is a demanding role, requiring her to appear composed on camera as a reporter while crumbling privately as a daughter and a person facing mortality. Many disaster movies from that era gave their strongest emotional arcs to male characters, but Deep Impact placed a huge amount of trust in Leoni to anchor the human side of the story. She rose to the challenge, delivering a performance that grounded the entire film in real, relatable emotion. Behind the biggest special effects sat one very human, very personal story, carried mostly by her. Number 2. A veteran actor who became a space hero, Robert Duvall, took on the role of Spurgeon Tanner, a tough, experienced astronaut leading a joint American and Russian mission to try to destroy the comet before it reaches Earth. Duvall was already a respected award-winning actor by this point in his career, and bringing that gravity to a science fiction disaster film gave the space mission scenes an unusual sense of weight and believability. He played Tanner with quiet confidence rather than loud heroics, making the character feel like someone who had truly earned his place among younger astronauts. His scenes aboard the spacecraft carried a calm authority that helped ground even the most fantastical moments of the plot. Watching a performer of his caliber commit fully to a role surrounded by spacesuits and special effects added unexpected credibility to the entire mission storyline. What could have felt like typical science fiction heroics instead felt lived in and real, thanks largely to the seriousness he brought to every scene. Number 1. The ending that chose hope over fear after counting down through so many secrets, surprises, and behind-the-scenes struggles, the single most important choice made by Deep Impact might be its decision to end on hope rather than despair. Many disaster movies focus purely on destruction, spectacle, and survival instinct. This film chose instead to focus on rebuilding, on community, and on the quiet strength people find in each other after tragedy. That final speech, added late in production, that comet named after a curious teenager, that emotional score borrowed from another world-ending story, all of it built toward one final message. Disasters end lives and destroy cities, but they do not destroy the human spirit. Filmmakers took an enormous risk crafting a summer blockbuster that dared to slow down and ask deeper questions about what truly matters when everything else disappears. What looked like just another disaster movie on the surface was really a quiet, hopeful story about humanity's ability to survive together. Bonus fact: the goodbye hidden in the credits beyond all 20 facts already shared, one story lingers quietly at the very edge of the film, easy to miss unless someone points it out. Deep Impact carries a dedication in its credits to Dietrich Lohmann, the cinematographer who secretly battled leukemia throughout the entire production before passing away shortly after filming wrapped. Most viewers scroll past dedications without a second thought, treating them as small, forgettable text on a dark screen. But this one holds an entire hidden story inside it. A man who helped shape the visual soul of a movie about survival and mortality was, in his own life, quietly facing the very themes his camera was capturing. Every carefully framed shot of grief, hope, and human connection passed through the eyes of someone confronting his own ending in real life. The crew reportedly carried a deep respect and tenderness for him during those final months of production, even as the pressures of a massive blockbuster continued around them. Nobody outside the production ever saw that quiet heaviness on screen. The film looks the same to every viewer, a polished, exciting summer disaster movie. But knowing this one hidden truth changes how certain scenes feel forever, especially the quieter, more emotional moments about loss and letting go. It becomes almost impossible not to wonder if some of that raw feeling on screen came from something painfully real happening just behind the camera. A film about the world ending carried, quietly, one man's real and personal ending inside it. Old grief, new meaning. Deep Impact could have been just another loud summer movie about a scary rock falling from space. Instead, it became something a little braver and a little more honest. It showed us that courage does not always look like explosions or last-minute heroics. Sometimes courage looks like a mother holding her daughter, a journalist finding the truth, a sick man still doing his job with quiet dignity, or a scared teenager falling in love before the world might end. Underneath the special effects and the giant waves, this movie was really about people choosing hope, connection, and honesty when everything familiar was about to disappear. That is why, all these years later, people still talk about it, still study it, and still find new secrets hidden behind its scenes. Every movie hides a truth, and Deep Impact hid more than most. If you enjoyed these stories, subscribe for more. Every movie hides a truth, and we'll keep uncovering them, one story at a time.